Laughter cut through the wedding hall like broken glass, sharp and careless, the kind that pretends to be harmless until it leaves someone bleeding inside. It rose from a cluster of well-dressed guests near the aisle, their smiles wide, their eyes unkind, all fixed on one girl standing alone near the back of the room. She was dressed in a soft blue gown that clung to her body in ways she had feared all week, her hands trembling as she tried to smooth the fabric over her stomach. In that moment, surrounded by chandeliers, flowers, and forced happiness, she felt smaller than she ever had in her life. Before the story continues, take a second. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for those who feel invisible, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Her name was Emily Carter, and weddings had always terrified her, not because she didn't believe in love, but because love, for people like her, always felt conditional. At 28, Emily had learned how quickly smiles could turn into whispers, how compliments could hide mockery, and how rooms full of people could still make you feel unbearably alone. She was obese, a word she had heard spoken in tones ranging from clinical to cruel, and she carried it like a label pressed onto her skin before anyone bothered to learn her name. Emily hadn't wanted to attend this wedding. It belonged to her cousin, Lily, beautiful, confident, and effortlessly admired, the kind of woman who glided through life collecting approval without trying. But family obligations were heavy, and Emily's mother, who had passed away 2 years earlier, had raised her to show up even when it hurt. So Emily showed up, clutching her invitation like armor, telling herself she could endure a few hours of discomfort. The hall was everything Emily expected and feared. White roses lined the aisle, fairy lights twinkled overhead, and the guests looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. Dresses hugged perfect figures, suits were tailored to flawless frames, and laughter floated easily among people who had never questioned whether they deserved to take up space. Emily felt her breath shorten as she moved through the room, aware of eyes sliding over her, some curious, some judgmental, some already dismissive. She took her place near the back, choosing a chair where she thought she might disappear. She reminded herself to smile, to keep her head high, to pretend she didn't notice the sideways glances. But pretending had always been exhausting. Every movement felt amplified, every step felt too heavy. And when a group of guests began whispering, their amusement barely concealed, Emily felt the familiar heat crawl up her neck. She didn't hear the exact words, but she knew the tone. She had known it since middle school, since the locker room, since the day a boy asked her out as a joke while his friends watched from behind. The laughter grew, subtle at first, then careless, and Emily's chest tightened as if the air itself had turned against her. She focused on the flowers at the altar, counting petals in her mind, trying not to let tears rise. What Emily didn't notice, lost in her effort to survive the moment, was the man sitting 3 rows ahead of her. His name was Daniel Hayes, a single father of 1, invited as a distant friend of the groom. Daniel hadn't planned on coming either. Weddings reminded him too much of what he had lost. 5 years earlier, his wife had died suddenly, leaving him alone with a 3-year-old son and a grief that settled into his bones. He came to events like this out of obligation, not celebration, and usually left early. Daniel noticed Emily not because of her size, but because of the way she stood. He recognized that posture, the slight hunch of someone bracing for impact, the careful stillness of someone trying not to draw attention. It mirrored how he had felt in the months after his wife's death, when pity and awkwardness followed him everywhere. When the laughter reached his ears, Daniel felt something shift inside him, a quiet anger mixed with recognition. He turned just enough to see the group laughing, their expressions smug, their cruelty casual. He saw Emily's hands twist together, the way her eyes dropped to the floor. In that instant, Daniel didn't think about social rules, or whether it was his place to intervene. He thought about his son, about the world he wanted him to grow up in, and about the many times he himself had wished someone would step forward when silence felt safer. The ceremony continued, vows exchanged, applause filling the hall, but a tension lingered beneath the surface for Emily. She barely registered the bride's entrance, barely heard the music. Her body was there, but her mind had retreated to a familiar place where she counted minutes until she could leave without seeming rude. She told herself she had survived worse, that this would pass like all the others. After the ceremony, the reception began, and with it came mingling, dancing, and more opportunities to be seen. Emily hovered near the edge of the room, pretending to be absorbed in her phone, even though there were no messages waiting. She felt foolish for wearing a dress she had once hoped might make her feel beautiful. The laughter from earlier echoed in her head, replaying itself with cruel persistence. That was when Daniel stood up. At first, no one paid attention. He walked toward the center of the room with the quiet confidence of someone who wasn't seeking permission. People assumed he was heading to the bar or the restroom, another guest moving through the crowd. But when he stopped near Emily, turning to face the room, the shift was noticeable. Conversations faltered. Glasses paused mid-air. Daniel's presence was calm but firm, the kind that demanded attention without theatrics. He didn't raise his voice or gesture wildly. He simply stood there, grounding the moment, and looked around the room as if taking inventory of every face. Emily felt his proximity before she understood his intention. Her heart raced, unsure whether this would make things worse. Daniel addressed the room in a way that carried weight, not because of volume, but because of sincerity. He spoke about kindness, about how easy it was to laugh when you thought no one important was listening. He spoke about loss, about how quickly life could humble you, and how the people you mock today might be the ones who save you tomorrow. He didn't single anyone out by name, but everyone knew exactly who he was speaking to. The room grew still. The laughter from earlier had evaporated, replaced by discomfort and reflection. Some guests looked away, suddenly fascinated by their plates or their phones. Others shifted in their seats, the realization settling in that their behavior had been witnessed and named. Emily stood frozen, her emotions colliding in a rush she couldn't sort through. Shame, relief, gratitude, fear, all tangled together. Then Daniel did something unexpected. He turned toward Emily not with pity but with respect, and extended an invitation for her to join him at the center of the room. It wasn't framed as a rescue, but as a choice. Emily hesitated, her instincts screaming to retreat, to hide, to refuse the spotlight. But something in Daniel's steady presence made her pause. For the first time in a long while, someone wasn't asking her to shrink. With legs that felt unsteady, Emily stepped forward. The room watched, silent now, as she moved beside Daniel. She felt exposed, but also strangely lighter, as if a weight she had carried for years was being shared. Daniel spoke again, this time about his late wife, about how she had taught him that love was measured by how you treated the most vulnerable person in the room. He spoke about his son, about the lessons he hoped to pass on, and about the responsibility everyone shared in shaping the world they lived in. The effect was undeniable. Something shifted in the atmosphere, a collective reckoning that couldn't be undone. Applause began, hesitant at first, then stronger, spreading through the hall. It wasn't the polite applause reserved for speeches, but something deeper, tinged with emotion. Emily felt tears finally spill over, but this time they weren't born of humiliation. They were born of being seen. As the reception continued, the energy of the room changed. People approached Emily with apologies, some awkward, some sincere. Others simply smiled, their expressions softer than before. Emily didn't know how to respond to all of it, but she felt a crack open inside her, letting in something unfamiliar. Hope. Daniel returned to his seat afterward, expecting nothing more than a quiet exit later in the evening. But Emily found herself drawn to him, wanting to express gratitude she couldn't yet put into words. They spoke briefly, not about the incident, but about ordinary things. Work, family, the strange beauty of small moments. There was no rush, no pressure, just an ease that surprised them both. Over the weeks that followed, they stayed in touch. What began as simple messages grew into longer conversations. Emily found herself laughing more, speaking more freely, discovering parts of herself she had hidden away. Daniel found joy in her warmth, her resilience, her quiet humor. His son adored her, sensing her kindness without needing explanation. Emily's journey wasn't magically transformed overnight. She still faced days when mirrors were unkind and memories resurfaced. But she was no longer alone in those moments. She began to see herself through different eyes, not defined by her body, but by her heart, her strength, and her capacity for love. The wedding became a turning point, not because someone saved her, but because someone reminded her of her worth. Daniel didn't erase the cruelty she had endured, but he disrupted it, proving that compassion could be louder than laughter. And in doing so, he changed more than one life that night. As this story draws to a close, take a moment to reflect. If Emily's journey, Daniel's courage, or the message of kindness has touched your heart in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread stories that remind us who we can choose to be. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person willing to step forward, to see someone not as the world labels them, but as who they truly are. And in a room full of laughter that wounds, choosing kindness can become the most powerful act of all.